Shalom, shalom, shalom to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. Salute, giving all honor, glory, and praise to the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashem HaMashiach Yahushai. Today's video is entitled Genesis 49, verse 3 and 4. The Seminole Indians are from the tribe of Reuben, and we're going to prove that today with a shadow of a doubt. Basically covering all grounds in regards to this, precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little, looking at history, historical facts and characteristics, and basically prophecies that has come to pass in regards to the Seminole Indians and how they are from the tribe of Reuben of old, of the, one of the, basically the first sons of Jacob. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to read Genesis 49 and 1. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. And we're in the last days now. Ever since Yahushai passed, we've been in the last days. So all of these things that Jacob's about to tell his sons, this will help us figure out who they are today. Understand? Because we know in Psalms, the 83rd chapter, it lets us know that the nations, including Esau, have conspired together, right, to keep us hidden. They consulted against the hidden ones, which is the Israelites. All right, so let's get down to verse 3 now, and let's get straight into Reuben. All right. We're going to do this piece by piece. So it says Genesis 49 verse 3. It says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength. I'm going to stop there and go to this precept because Reuben is the firstborn of Jacob. The precept is in Genesis, the 29th chapter, verse 32. It reads, And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, Surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. So if you're giving you a little backstory, Leah basically was given to Jacob from Laban, right? But really and truly, Jacob wanted Rachel. But, Laban was crafty and he wanted the servitude of Jacob longer. So he gave him Leah first, and he made the excuse or whatnot. You could look in that backstory, but he made the excuse saying that, the eldest daughter is always given away before the youngest and whatnot. Okay, so Leah wasn't looked upon with favor from Jacob because Jacob really loved Rachel. And in order, basically, the Most High don't deal with unjust weights and balances. So what the Most High did was he made Leah fruitful and not Rachel, to balance out that love that Jacob had to basically give to both his wives. All right, so right here, let you know, Reuben, right, it's a firstborn. And then also in Numbers 26, verse 5, another precept, right? It says, Reuben, the eldest son of Israel, right? We know that Genesis 32, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. So I'm going to read it. Reuben, the eldest son of Israel, the children of Reuben, right? Hanok, of whom cometh the family of the Hanokites, of Palu, the family of the Paluites, right? And that word Hanok right there is, it comes from the word Enoch, which means dedicated. Okay, so Hanok means dedicated. All right, so going back, it says Genesis 49 and 3, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength. Okay, so that shows the beginning of Jacob's strength, right? His firstborn son, right? His strength in what? His progeny, his seed, his lineage, right? Then it says here the excellency, also too, the might and strength. Let me touch on that real quick. Deuteronomy 33 and 6. It says, Let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. Right? So you could relate that in the might and strength. Okay? Because And I'm going to relate it further on in this video as far as let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. Right. Also, too, Genesis 49 and Deuteronomy 33, their precepts as far as breaking down what shall befall Jacob's sons in the last days. Their precepts with each other, those two chapters, just like how Deuteronomy 5 and Exodus 20th chapters basically have the commandments, so it's precepts. All right, so my might and strength, reading on, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Okay, so that word dignity there, look at my notes right here. The word dignity, the meaning of the word dignity means composed or serious manner, worthy of honor or respect. And we know that when it came to the Native American Indians, they always looked up with, they were very composed people, right? Very serious people, right? And they always were showed honor and respect, right? They had chiefs who was worthy of honor and respect. They showed honor and respect to the animals that they had to slaughter for food and other resources, right? Like clothing and such. So there were people who had a serious manner about them and basically honorable people, right? So it says the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Okay. Now I'm going to go into this article here on this website. It's called nanations.com. You could I'll leave a description of this. I'll leave the website in the description below this video, right? And it says here, personal characteristics of Seminole Indians. Now let's see if these personal characteristics match up with what's being described here, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Okay, in verse 3. So I'm going to read here. It says here, the physique of the men. All right. So it reads, physically, both men and women are remarkable. The men, as a rule, attract attention by their height, fullness, and symmetry of the development, and the regularity and agreeableness of their features. In muscular power and constitutional ability to endure, they excel. They got that word excel again, right? So in muscular power, muscular endurance, right? And it says in constitutional ability, right? Constitutional ability meaning to govern themselves, okay? To be composed, right? Have that serious manner and, deal with things in the right way, right? It says to endure, they excel. So they had that, they excelled in endurance, right? Next, it says, while these qualities distinguish, with a few exceptions, the men of the whole tribe, they are particularly characteristic of the two most widely spread of the families of the which the tribe is composed. These are the Tiger and Otter clans, which, proud of their lines of descent, have been preserved through a long and tragic past with exceptional freedom from admixture with degrading blood. So basically their lineage was not mixed and they didn't intermingle. Right, so they kept that pure blood. Reading on. Today, their men might be taken as types of physical excellence. Right? So there goes that excellency of dignity and excellency of power. Right? We're still on that. Reading on. The physique of every tiger warrior, especially, would furnish proof of this statement. The tigers are dark, copper-colored fellows. I'm going to read that again. The tigers, this is talking about the Seminole Indians, a certain tribe within the Seminole Indians, right? But overall, we know that they all have these characteristics. So I'm going to read it again. In their appearance, it says the tigers are dark, copper-colored fellows. So we know copper basically is a derivative of brown, right? Copper is like a penny, the color of like a penny, right? Over 6 feet in height, so they were tall, with limbs in good proportion, right? They were well proportioned, it wasn't uneven. Their hands and feet well shaped and not very large. Their stature erect, meaning they had that proper posture, straight back. They're bearing a sign of self-confident power. There goes that word power again, self-confident power. Their movements deliberate persistent and strong. So they move with a purpose, right? They were persistent in what they were doing, and they were strong. Their heads are large and their foreheads full and marked. An almost universal characteristic of the tiger's face is its squareness, a widened and protruding under jawbone giving this effect to it. Of other features, I noticed that under a large forehead are deep-set, bright black eyes, small but expressive of inquiry and vigilance. The nose is slightly aquiline and sensitively formed about the nostrils. The lips are mobile, sensuous, and not very full, disclosing when they smile beautiful regular teeth, and the whole face is expressive of the man's sense of having extraordinary ability to endure and to achieve. Two of the warriors permitted me to manipulate the muscles of their bodies. Right, so this is Edomite's account of the Seminole people, because Esau is always studying people. Reading on, because they ain't got nothing about them. Reading on. Under my touch, these were more like rubber than flesh. Noticeable among all are the large calves of their legs, the size of the tendons of their lower limbs, and the strength of their toes. Right. So I'm going to skip down. I ain't going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to leave the website in the description below so you could go and fact check it yourself. Right, because there's brothers out here who don't believe that the Native Americans are Israelites, and them all black type Israelite brothers with that mindset, but they need to prove themselves. You can't just state something, and you got to prove it. You got to provide the replacement theology that you want to bring in. You can't refute something if you don't have something to replace it with. All right, so I'm gonna just skip down and end it here in this last sentence. There are, as I have said, exceptions to this rule of unusual physical size and strength, but these are few. So few, disregarding them, we may pronounce the Seminole men handsome and exceptionally powerful. So basically, they're saying there's exceptions to the rules, but overall, predominantly, they're powerful. Okay, so right there backs up the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power, okay, because they're known for their power. Right, now moving on, going down to verse 4 here. Okay, it says, unstable as water thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. Okay, so we're going to first deal with unstable as water. Now, unstable as water, we already said that the Seminoles are the tribe of Reuben is the Seminole Indians of today, right? Unstable as water, you can relate that and you can interpret that, and you can attribute that to them being in Florida, because Florida is below sea level, right? Florida is a state known for having sinkholes. Right, so it is an unstable place. It's on water, but it's below the water. Right, so that you could attribute it to that. You could attribute it to when the Seminole Wars, when the Seminole Indians were forced to go further south in Florida, and they ended up in the Everglades, in the swamps, right, and that's where they had to build houses on stilts because of the water. Right, so you could attribute it to that too, because they did build houses on stilts in the swamps, okay, to keep away from the animals and obviously the alligators, crocodiles, and whatnot. And obviously it's on water, so you need some stability, right, of where you live. And then also we can attribute unstable as water to their name, Seminole. Seminole means wild one, or runaway, right? So if you're a wild person, you're not very stable. You're moving about the place, right? You run away, right? You're nomadic or whatnot. You're moving about the place. Okay, so to prove that, here's another website, NativeAmericanIndianFacts.com. Okay, that's going to be in the description below, and it says here, the name Seminole originates from the Spanish word cimarron, which roughly translates to wild one or runaway. Okay, so that's fact checking. Then, still dealing with unstable as water, we go down to more factual information about the Seminole Indians in relation to this prophecy that Jacob is given in the scriptures. And we find here, originally the tribe's houses were built on the ground out of wood and plaster. As they migrated southward into the Everglades, they started building their houses on stilts about 3 feet above the ground in order to protect themselves from swamp animals and floods. That's that unstable as water. Okay, so beyond a shadow of a doubt, the Seminole Indians are Reubenites, right? According to prophecy, according to what will befall them in the last days, what would happen to them in the last days. That this is what Jacob was telling them, right? They didn't understand it then, but these things came to pass, these prophecies that will befall them, right? So that's unstable as water. Okay. And it says here, so that's unstable as water. Now we're going to move on to thou shalt not excel. Okay, thou shalt not excel. Now this is dealing with excelling what? When they were attacked, these Seminole Wars, okay, right? These Seminole Wars, they didn't defeat Esau, right? So moving on into the Seminole Wars, right? There was a first Seminole War, there was a second Seminole War, and there was a third Seminole War, right? I'll read from the first Seminole War, right? And this is going to be in the description below. Fact checking. Right, these websites. So it says here, the first Seminole War. Back when Britain controlled Florida, the British often incited Seminoles against American settlers who were migrating south into Seminole territory. These old conflicts, combined with the safe haven Seminoles provided black slaves, caused the U.S. Army to attack the tribe in the First Seminole War, 1817 to 1818, which took place in Florida and southern Georgia. Forces under General Andrew Jackson, that devil, invaded Spanish Florida, attacked several key locations, and pushed the Seminoles further south into Florida. Finally, after several official and unofficial U.S. military expeditions into the territory, Spain formally ceded Florida to the United States in 1821, according to terms of the Adam-Onis Treaty. Right, and Esau never keep his treaties. They broke every treaty they made. As soon as the United States acquired Florida, it began urging the Indians there to leave their lands and relocate along with other southeastern tribes to Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma. Some Seminole leaders signed a treaty in 1832, and part of the tribe moved, but other Seminoles refused to recognize the treaty and fled into the Florida Everglades. Now we into the Second Seminole War. The Treaty of Payne's Landing, signed by a small number of Seminoles in May 1832, required Indians to give up their Florida lands within 3 years and move west. When the U.S. Army arrived in 1835 to enforce the treaty, the Indians were ready for war. As Major Francis Dade marched from Fort Brooke toward Fort King, 180 Seminole warriors led by Micanopy, Alligator, and Jumper attacked. Only one man of that army detachment survived the ambush. The campaigns of, so basically, Micanopy, Alligator, and Jumper killed off 179. Wait. Oh, wait. Yeah, okay. So they killed off their men there. So this guy right here, I want to touch on this guy, Francis Dade, right? That's Edomite devil. There's Miami-Dade is named after him, right? Down in Florida, Miami-Dade. All right, moving on. The campaigns of the Second Seminole War were an outstanding demonstration of guerrilla warfare by the Seminole. The Micos, Jumper, Alligator, Micanopy, and Osceola leading less than 3,000 warriors were pitted against 4 U.S. generals and more than 30,000 troops. Right, so the Seminoles only had 3,000 warriors against 4 generals plus 30,000 troops. The Second Seminole War, 1835 to 1842, usually referred to as the Seminole War proper, was the fiercest war waged by the U.S. government against American Indians. The United States spent more than $20 million fighting the Seminoles. Look at that. All that money that Esau put in war to fight against people who belonged in the land, and they were the original inhabitants and basically the indigenous people of the land. Right, $20 million in 1835 to 1842. Unbelievable. I read it on. The war left more than 1,500 soldiers and uncounted American civilians dead, and the obvious duplicity of the U.S. government's tactics marred Indian-white relations throughout the country for future generations. See that? So this word duplicity right here means two-faced, right? You a snake, right? You got a forked tongue, right? You backstab people. You say one thing and mean the other. That's Esau's characteristics. Okay, and this is what the U.S. government used. That was their tactics, duplicity. Reading on. As the hostiles dragged on, frustrated U.S. forces increasingly turned to desperate measures to win the war. For example, Osceola was captured and imprisoned when he met with U.S. troops who had called for a truce and claimed to want to talk peace. Look at this. See that? So they said they want to talk peace. That's that duplicity, right? That's that two-facedness, that forked tongue that Esau got because he's a liar like his father, the devil, right? Osceola was captured and imprisoned. So when he met with the U.S. troops who had called for a truce. So these U.S. troops called for a truce, and then what? And they claimed they wanted to talk peace, and they arrested that man, right? That's why the Bible tell you in Sirach, the 12th chapter, what? Don't trust your enemy. Never trust thine enemy. Right, reading on. With Osceola in prison, the United States was confident the war would end soon, but it did not. Although Osceola died in prison in 1838, other Seminole leaders kept the battle going for a few more years. In 1842, a nominal end to the hostilities arrived. Though no peace treaty was ever signed, by this time most Seminoles had been moved from Florida, relocated to Indian Territory, today's Oklahoma. Okay, so yeah, that's it on that. And basically that was touching on thou shalt not excel. Okay, thou shalt not excel. So they did not excel in them Seminole Wars. Okay, they did not excel in the Seminole Wars. This third Seminole War right here says a third Seminole War broke out in 1855 when conflicts largely over land arose between whites and some Seminoles who remained in Florida. Constant military patrols and rewards for the capture of Indians reduced the Seminole population to about 200 when the Third Seminole War ended in 1858. So their population was reduced to about 200, right? After the war ended in the Third Seminole War ended in 1858. But like the Most High said, let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. Right? So they ain't gonna be totally eradicated. They ain't gonna be extinct. Okay. But the men were few here. And so that right there is touching on thou shalt not excel. All right, dealing with the Seminole Wars. Moving on, it says, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. What's that talking about? Reuben going up to his father's bed. His father's who? Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. Let's read. You go to the book of Genesis 35:22 to find a precept and the interpretation of what's that talking about. So Genesis 35:22, it reads, and it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. See that? So Reuben went off. He went and revealed and uncovered his father's nakedness by laying with his father's concubine. Okay, so Bilhah, I forget if she was a handmaid for either Leah or Rachel, but basically she was a handmaid, right? And that was his father's concubine. All right, and then go ahead for the further precept in 1 Chronicles 5:1. It reads, "Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel." That's another precept to let you know that Reuben is the firstborn of Jacob. "For he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed," right, by what? Laying with Bilhah, "his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel." Right, so because he's a firstborn, he was supposed to have the birthright, but he went off. He uncovered his father's nakedness, right, and slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah. Right, so it says here, "And the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright." So the genealogy of Reuben is not to be reckoned, it's not to be recognized after basically the birthright of what. So it's not just because he's the firstborn don't mean he received the birthright, that blessing and that covenant right there. Okay, it was given unto another because he went off, right? He went off big time. And let me just pull a precept here in Deuteronomy, the 27th chapter. It says here, "Cursed be he that lieth with his father's wife, because he uncovereth his father's skirt." And all the people shall say, Amen. Okay, so that you get cursed for that. You ain't getting blessings for laying with your father's wife. You uncovered your father's nakedness. Okay, so he went off with that. So that's it on that. As far as Reuben being proven to be the Seminole Indians today, and the Seminole Indians proven to be from the tribe of Reuben of old. Okay, I'm going to end it off with these two videos. So I got this video here is an interview with Enoch Kelly Haney, former chief of the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. See that further history proving that the Seminoles were moved west into Oklahoma, right? And I just chose this certain part of this video. It says, "What is the significance of the guardian facing east?" Now, this guardian is a idol, right? It's a statue or whatnot. So we ain't gonna go too much into that because we know that's going off according to the commandments, making graven images or whatnot. But basically, we're touching on this idol facing east, and we're gonna hear why Enoch Kelly, right, is saying why this idol is facing east, right? And just to touch on his name one more time, Enoch, right here, is in relation to Hanok. Hanok here, okay, because Hanok is the same name as Enoch, and it means dedicated. Okay, so that's not a coincidence that this man's name is Hanok or Enoch, Salakia. So I'm gonna play this video.
As I've stated, there are hundreds of native tribes in America. They don't all believe the same thing. Their languages are different, and their history and their ceremonies are different. There are certain things that do apply. Generally speaking, the circle is one, but the other is facing east. In the mornings we face east to pray. In our ceremonies, the chief's little arbor there faces east. There are 4 arbors around the circle, and they faced east. At the native churches that were built in later years, in early 1900s, there were camp houses built around the churches, but the church faced east. So the guardian faces east.
All right, so that's it on that video right there. So you see, he said in the morning they would face east to pray, right? And then he says how this guardian, this basically idol, faces east as well. You know, had the 4 corners or whatever. Okay. Now I'm gonna play this next video by another Reubenite or Seminole Indian, as they call him today. Right. This brother's name is Everett Osceola. Okay, and Osceola is a county in Florida. Okay, so his name, it goes back to Florida. And where were the Seminoles? In Florida. Okay, so we're going to hear this brother's account of things. And then Osceola also, right here, let you know Osceola. named Billy Powell at birth in Alabama, became an influential leader of the Seminole people in Florida. Right, his mother was Creek, and his great-grandfather was the redoubtable Scotsman James McQueen. He was reared by his mother in Creek tradition. So here goes another man, Osceola, right here. Okay, so it says great-grandfather was the redoubtable Scotsman James McQueen. Now, we know Scots means black. Scotsman would mean black man. So not necessarily, James McQueen doesn't necessarily mean that he's a white man. I would have to do further research into that. As far as this Osceola man right here. But let me play this video and get some more background information and information proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Seminole Indians are from the tribe of Reuben, according to biblical scripture.
We want to be known as how we are today. We're living, we're breathing, we still have our culture, we still have our language, and we want to be looked at as Americans as well. And I think for some reason the American dream is that they forget about the Native Americans. I am Everett Osceola, and I am Seminole. The way we used to live was by war. The way we used to live was by survival. The Seminoles are called the unconquered people because we were the only tribe within U.S. history to not sign any treaties. Seminole actually was derived from a dialect of Spanish. They just said Cimarron, meaning wild one or the untamed ones. So it got butchered over time and over generations that it was called Seminole. But in a way it kind of stuck because we weren't part of the Creeks, we weren't part of the Choctaws or the Chickasaws. We actually were a part of...
Look at that brother right there. Look at this Seminole right here. Just like how they described. Tall, copper colored, dark skin, right? Look at him. Very like austere looking, you know, looking like a chief straight, but you can see that tall figure right there. All right.
Some of the ancient tribes. So being untamed or wild ones, you know, we just kind of inherited the name, and we kind of just, we have it now, and we kind of have it now proudly. All our traditions are passed down orally, like our songs, our...
You can see with the language, it looks similar, like the characters, some of them, and then even how they're saying ta, da, ka, cha, la, right? They have the mind there. It's similar to the Lashuan Kodash.
Stories and our language. There are two languages within the Seminole tribe. One is called Creek, which is part of the, kind of like the Port Creeks of Alabama and even the Creek Nation. And then we also have the Miccosukee language, which is mostly the predominant language that's spoken today. Did the Seminoles own Florida at one point? Yes, they did. We have records going back probably as far as maybe 1713. And there was a map of where they said that we actually had not only Florida, but it went as far as Florida, Alabama, Georgia, almost all the way up to Tennessee. We've always been part of Florida. The only reason why we kind of disbanded is because when the Europeans came, it was kind of like, you guys belong here. You guys are going to be called this. You eat this certain type of food, so you're going to be called, you know, you're going to be named after that food. So when we would go back and forth between Florida, when the Europeans came, we had to stick to one certain area in order to survive. And then during the times of war, they tried to make a deal with us. Of course, we didn't go for that deal, but after the First Seminole War, which was around 1815 to around 1820, they tried to give us to sign where we were going to have some land within Florida. And that covered, it was like right in the middle, Ocala, all the way down to Vero Beach. And then, you know, that didn't go as well, and then that's when we had two more Seminole Wars. And that's when we pretty much, it came down to just where we were hiding in the Everglades in order to survive. when we came out of the swamps and when we were put on reservations, we weren't given that much. We were given maybe some water, maybe some commodities, but we had to live, we had to learn how to survive even in Hollywood. But we ended up learning from all the different resources that were around us, not only natural, but all the other different resources. And the thing is that we were able to prevail over it. When we started our businesses on the Seminole tribe, we started off with the smoke shops, the citrus and groves, the cattle industry, even the gas stations. Everything is owned by Seminoles. But in order to start those businesses, you have to put in shares. So when that started, some of the tribal members put their shares into making the smoke shop to run, or even when the gaming started, you know, we had to put some of our shares into that and into that business in order to make it a corporation. So when this had happened, you know, when everything is done, just like any other company, when everything is done and everything's tallied up and everybody's paid their portion, it comes back to the people, because that's whose money went into that entity in order to make that money. When we had started getting wealthier because of the gaming, we were becoming targeted by the local newspapers. Some we were even done on us that made us look bad, that made us seem like we were greedy. And then at one point, it was to the point where we were being targeted just by having our cars, like the Seminole tribe license plate, or if we had like even as simple as a Dreamweaver, like hanging on our rearview mirrors, they were quick to be broken into, because there was a lot of misinformation being put out there saying that we were rich, that we have, you know, this much money.
Look how wicked Esau is. So they're receiving their money from the gaming industry as far as casinos and such. And you have envious, wicked Edomites, right, going around saying, oh, they're rich and they want to get at them, when really and truly this land belonged to them anyway. They're meant to be living off this land. They're meant to be living like this. See, Esau is just wicked, man. He keep his foot on your neck.
As far as going to party, you know, how well or how much of a relationship. This is how much we get a day, and I believe even a newspaper had even printed out stats of how much we got, or how they even went to as far as going to car dealerships to asking, you know, how well or how much of a relationship do you have with the Seminole tribe. And so this put it out there that we were pretty much.
I like that he mentioned the Rockefellers, okay, them devils. They definitely had a part in displacing you from your land.
Like I was saying before, back pockets. It's just like any other business, but the difference is just like I was saying before. It has to do with the fact that we have this land in order to make these successful businesses run. We have 6 reservations, and on each reservations, they're located throughout South Florida. There's one in Hollywood, Big Cypress, which is in the Everglades, Brighton, which is near Lake Okeechobee, and we have like little sub-tribes like Fort Pierce, Immokalee, and we also have one in Tampa, but they're very small. We want to be remembered as how we are now, that we're living people, that we're people that are living amongst you, not something that you see in a book, not something you see on TV. But, you know, we're doing our thing and we're still here. And that's how we want to be remembered, is that we're still here. We're not some sort of an exhibit. We're not some sort of antique, you know, extinct people. We're still here.
Right, so that's it on that. And basically, that's being proven that the tribe of Reuben are the Seminole Indians, right? And if you don't agree with that and you're going against that way of thinking, then you have to provide interpretation of the verses. Genesis 49, verse 3 and 4. You have to provide the interpretation of who these people are today, right? Who is the tribe of Reuben today? If you're saying that they're not the Native American Indians and you're all black Israelite mindset, you have to provide who they are. Who are they? Who's the tribe of Reuben? Okay, so all honor, all praise, all glory to the Most High for the interpretation thereof. Peace and blessings to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. And death and destruction to Babylon, America. Okay, this place needs to be finished. But this was for edification as far as the tribe of Reuben. And I'm going to do other tribes as well. Shalom.